Hi guys, it's me, ChazzaHD, and welcome to this weekend review for the Japanese Grand Prix weekend of 2023. Hope you guys are well. Thankfully, for me at least where I'm at, I'm streaming at a reasonable time of 8 p.m. at night. But yeah, it was a decent weekend in Japan. It definitely could have been better, no doubt about that. Qualifying, probably the most boring session of the season, qualifying wise. The race was actually, for the first half, it was pretty good. But then, second half of the race, it just really petered out. I think the amount of retirements we got, which were quite excessive compared to what we normally have, didn't help with that because really from like ninth place down towards the end of the race, there was literally nothing going on. So yeah, it did peter out, but it was a decent, if not a, maybe you could argue a good race at Suzuka. And there were a couple incidents in that race that I want to go over in tonight's stream. So that's what we're going to be doing. Also, we'll be kind of talking about, how the, what do you call it? How the race yesterday affects the championship standings and just getting into a couple things to round off the race weekend. So let's just get into it. And actually, before I do, couple things. Hopefully you guys are all well, no matter what time zone you're in, part of the world you're from. Hope you're all having as best a time as possible. And yeah, hopefully you'll join me tonight in reviewing some of these incidents. There is a poll running at the top of the live chat, you may see. And I've asked you guys in that poll, does Sergio Perez deserve to be at Red Bull Racing? Let me know yes or no, or even not sure if you are literally not sure as to whether he does deserve not to be at Red Bull for next year. Let me know. Personally, I'd probably put myself in the not sure category at the minute because, yeah, yesterday was bad. We've had other bad races from him this season, but he's also had some very good ones. So, yeah, we'll get into that later on, though. But first, let's get into the actual results of the Japanese Grand Prix and look at the top 10. So Max Verstappen won the Japanese Grand Prix for Red Bull, and Red Bull, because of that win, and Mercedes and Ferrari not having good enough races championship-wise, Red Bull are the Constructors' Champions of 2023 officially, and they've won the Constructors' title in September, which I think is the earliest it's been won in a long time. Got to be like 13, 14 years, surely. Maybe they won it this early back in like 2011 or something, but yeah, it's been a long time since it's been won, the Constructors' title in September. And he absolutely dominated the race, winning from Lando Norris in second by 20 seconds pretty much. Oscar Piastri third. Look how far Piastri was by the end. 17 seconds behind Norris. I know Lando was on fresher tyres for most of the race, but yeah, quite a poor pace in the end. But at least he got the podium. That is still a good job from Oscar, but even said after the race, he needs to do a lot of work on his race pace because it is quite lacking at the moment. But yeah, great result for McLaren. Very happy for them. And you got Charles Leclerc in fourth. Good result for him. The best he could have got out of a difficult weekend for the team. Lewis Hamilton in fifth. Just had a Carlos Sainz in sixth. And Hamilton doing well to hold on to fifth. But yeah, to end up nearly 50 seconds behind Verstappen after the race is absolutely, it's incredible to me that they're still this far behind Red Bull. I know, of course, they're focusing a lot on 2024, but I just don't get how during the course of a season they've dropped off. Or not that they've dropped off, but they just haven't seemingly made any progress on Red Bull. Because if you remember back to the first race in Bahrain, I think the gap between Hamilton, the highest placed Mercedes, and Verstappen in that race was, I think, 50 seconds or maybe even 55 seconds or something like that. So, yeah, it's just incredible how poor Mercedes were. And then you got Carlos Sainz in sixth. George Russell 7th, Fernando Alonso 8th. Alonso, look how far behind he was in the end. Yeah, incredible how slow the Aston Martin was. And also yesterday, the Aston Martin was wearing its tyres out so quickly. I know they started with a soft tyre, but even on I think it was the hard tyre, they had to pit quite early and were struggling for pace even on that. So, yeah, such a strange race in my view from Aston Martin. I didn't think they were going to get a great result anyway, but the reasons why they were slow were very peculiar because normally you'd expect them to have the best tyre life out of anyone, but it was terrible. And yeah, that is a massive concern going forward for the rest of the year when they're trying, of course, to secure 4th in the championship. And then you've got Ocon 9th, Gasly 10th. Them two, Ocon and Gasly, swapped position on the final lap because Alpine instructed Gasly to swap back the positions. Because the reason Gasly got ahead of Ocon a few laps before the end, because Esteban, I believe, let Pierre through to, I think, to try and get after Alonso if he could, because Gasly was on much fresher tyres, but he couldn't. So Alpine told Pierre to let Ocon through, which I know Pierre very unhappy about. He was absolutely furious after the race, but I think really it was more of a communication issue between Alpine and Gasly, because I don't think Alpine necessarily told Gasly that was the plan, to swap positions back if Gasly couldn't, make up the ground to overtake Alonso. But if that's indeed what it was, just a communication problem, then I don't think there needs to be that much. I don't think Pierre needs to go absolutely crazy over it, because I think it is or was the right decision by Alpine. They just probably should have communicated it better from them to the driver. But yeah, that is your top 10, and just incredible how quick Red Bull were during the race. On average, they were, pretty much a second a lap quicker than Mercedes and Ferrari. Compared to McLaren, it was, probably a third of a second, maybe 0.4 of a second per lap. McLaren, the only team that can get anywhere near Red Bull. Aston Martin, well over a second a lap slower. And obviously the rest, like a second and a half plus slower than the Red Bull per lap. Another thing that's incredible, and of course we've talked a lot this season about, McLaren's progress, insane progress, but Lando finishing half a minute clear of the best Mercedes car. Just incredible. Again, another surprisingly poor thing from Mercedes. At the first race in Bahrain, they... I can't remember how far they finished ahead of McLaren. Well, Norris had those issues, didn't he, in the race where he kept pitting after every 10 laps or so. But they were way, 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 way quicker than McLaren, and were finishing in terms of lap time or time on track during the race, 40, 50 seconds, even a minute clear of McLaren. Yet they're half a minute behind here in Japan. It's just terrible for Mercedes. And for Aston Martin, is it over a minute? No, almost 1 minute behind the McLaren of Norris, when Aston Martin were literally lapping the McLaren cars in the first few races of the season. Just incredible how those two teams especially have... Well, with Mercedes, I wouldn't say they've gone backwards, but they just haven't gone anywhere, really. Aston Martin, though, yeah, incredible how far they've fallen, and they're falling even further at the moment. But let's have a look at the championship standings, just to see how the results here affects things going forward. So Max Verstappen is now 177 points clear, I believe. Is he 177 points clear? Yeah, he is. 177 points clear of Sergio Perez, and Max on officially 400 points. I believe after Qatar, he needs at least a 145 point lead, does Max, after the Qatar Grand Prix to be officially world champion. So, wait, does he? Yeah, he does. 45 points. I'm pretty sure I've done the calculations a couple of times, and I believe I am correct. Now, you may be thinking, well, no, surely he should be champion now, given there's only 26 points available for the race, in 2 weeks in Qatar. But remember, in Qatar, we have the Sunday race and the sprint race. So there are 36 points on offer at most for Sergio Perez to try and prevent Max from winning the third world title in 2 weeks' time. So, 36 points, you take that away from 177, that's that would put it down to what? 100 and what would it be? 141 points, I think, between the two. So Max Verstappen only needs to score, I believe, 4 points in the sprint race, 4 points over Perez, of course, in the sprint race in Qatar to officially become 3-time world champion. So, for example, if Max Verstappen wins the sprint race and Sergio Perez finishes, what would it be? I think if Perez finishes 3rd or 4th, then Max is champion before even the Sunday race. So, yeah, it's going to be very weird, put it that way, when he does win the championship, given that it's probably going to be in the sprint race. Should be, well, not fun to watch necessarily, but it should be interesting to see the celebrations afterwards, given there's a race on the Sunday. It'd be interesting to see how much Max and Red Bull decide to celebrate. You'd think they won't go too hard on Saturday night, but yeah, we'll see on that. Sergio Perez second, only 33 points clear of Lewis Hamilton, which just illustrates how bad Sergio Perez has been in 2023. That he's only 33 points clear of third, because he should be like another 70, 80 points clear of where he is. Let's be honest. He's been very poor, really, since the, start of the European season, except for, 2 or 3 races here or there. Lewis Hamilton, then in third, 16 points clear of Fernando Alonso fourth, Carlos Sainz fifth, Charles Leclerc sixth, Lando Norris climbs up to 7th in the championship. He is level on points with George Russell, but the reason he's ahead of Russell is because Lando's best race result this year is second, which I think he's finished there 3 or 4 times. I think it's 4 times now. And Russell has not had a second place finish yet, I think, this season. I think Russell's best race result is third, which would have been Spain, I think. Yeah, pretty sure it would have been Spain. Oscar Piastri now into the top 10 of the Drivers' Championship. So great to see. And I think he could make some good progress on Russell ahead with Piastri. So maybe he'll climb up another position before the end of the season. Of course, there are only 6 races to go. Plus, you've got, 3 more sprint races along with those 6 more race weekends. Lance Stroll, by the skin of his teeth, in the top 10 of the championship. It's actually funny, because if Alpine had not swapped the positions of Gasly and Ocon at the end of the race, Gasly finishing in 9th, if he had finished there, again, if they had not done the swap, Gasly would have dropped Stroll out of the top 10 of the championship, because, of course, Gasly has had a podium this season. And even though they would have been level on points, Gasly would have been ahead and Stroll would have gone down to 11th place. Just illustrating how horrendous Lance Stroll's season has been. And at this rate, I think when I did my mid-season review, I ranked Stroll as, was it the 18th worst driver out of like 20? At the minute, I'd probably have to say Lance is, or has been, the worst driver of the entire season. Even worse than Nick de Vries at this rate. He is abysmal. He's an absolute abomination at the moment, is Stroll, and is only 1 point clear of Pierre Gasly, and I think is 9 points clear of Ocon. Just incredible how bad he's been. And then on the constructor side, you've got Red Bull, of course, officially the world champions and are 300 and 318 points clear of Mercedes. Can Red Bull break the record for the most points by any constructor ever? I don't actually know what the record is, but surely they're going to be close to it. Mercedes then in second, only 20 points clear now of Ferrari, and that battle is certainly going to be interesting going forward into the final 6 races. And looking at the tracks we've got remaining, I'm not sure necessarily there is a clear favourite for that battle. At the minute, I'd probably say I'm favouring Ferrari, given how Mercedes have dropped off as of late. But yeah, there's definitely not a clear favourite. It should be a good battle to the end of the season. Then you got Aston Martin 4th, who are now 49 points clear of McLaren. McLaren, I am certain at this point, they will finish ahead of Aston Martin in the championship. Because looking at what we saw in Suzuka, the upgrade they've recently brought has not entirely worked, but it has worked to a degree, giving them an extra 2 or 3 tenths of a second, I would say. And, looking at how bad Aston Martin are with the tracks we've got coming up and the type of tracks they are, I just don't see how Aston Martin hold on to 4th. And especially with, McLaren have got 2 top drivers in their car. Aston Martin, at the minute, basically have 1 driver in their car. Lance Stroll may as well not even be there, because he's literally adding nothing to the team. Lance has only scored, 3 points, I think, since the Hungarian Grand Prix, which is pathetic for a driver of his quality that we've seen quality from him before. I cannot believe that he's having this bad of a season, if I'm being honest. So yeah, McLaren, I think, will finish in 4th place, which would be a great result for this season, which looked like it was going to be possibly one of the worst in recent history for them. And then you've got Alpine in 6th, 3 extra points clear of the rest behind them. Williams in 7th, Haas 8th, Alfa Romeo 9th, and AlphaTauri 10th. AlphaTauri, of course, was so close in terms of position to a points finish, and they were running for a bit of time in 9th and 10th place, so it is a shame that they didn't end up in the points, because if they did finish 9th and 10th, then of course they would be only 2 points behind Alfa Romeo. But yeah, looking at the car AlphaTauri have got at the minute, I think definitely they will close the gap to Alfa Romeo in the next couple races. Whether they finish ahead or not, though, we'll have to see. If I was to bet on it, I think AlphaTauri probably do finish ahead of Alfa Romeo, maybe Haas as well, given how their car looks at the minute. So yeah, we'll keep an eye on that going into the final 6 races. Yeah, that's how the championship now looks going into the final 6 race weekends of the season. Let's now get into a couple topics for this video. And yeah, guys, make sure as I do these topics to let me know your thoughts on what I'm going to get into. And let's start at Mercedes-Benz, because yesterday's race, obviously they weren't quick. They were pretty lucky, to be honest, to finish in 5th place, because really it was a bit of a poor strategy from Ferrari that caused Carlos Sainz to not finish in 5th place. I know Sainz also, or I think he was actually the one calling for him to stay out as long as he did for that second stint, which in hindsight, and even at the time, I thought was the wrong decision, because it cost them vital track position, and it gave Carlos, in the end, too much work to do to finish in 5th place. And not only did they have that to contend with, and they were slow, and they had a terrible weekend, they were the 4th best team consistently through the weekend, they also had a little, well, maybe it's a bit extreme to call it a scrap between the 2 drivers, but definitely tensions at this team are raised, definitely going forward. And it's not just what happened yesterday, but it's also, to a degree, what happened in Singapore. Because, of course, in Singapore, even though Russell in qualifying was amazing and was ahead of Hamilton in the race, in that final stint of the race in Singapore, Lewis was quicker, and there was a debate, should Mercedes have let Lewis past Russell to have a go and try and win the race? Again, I don't think it was a clear, yes, they should have let him through, or no, they shouldn't have. It was definitely up for debate, but it definitely got people talking. And if I was to guess, I'd say Lewis Hamilton probably thought, and may have even said it, I'm not sure exactly he did say it, but he definitely, I think, would have thought, why isn't the team told, George to let me have a go? Because Lewis definitely had the better pace in that final stint in Singapore, and he caught Russell up by quite a few seconds and ended the race with the fastest lap. So, yeah, you have that. And then here in Japan, yeah, quite a battle in the race on track, firstly. And we'll just have a quick look at this battle at Spoon Curve. Because the reason I want to look at it is, one, just to see how close they got, from having contact. But also, I do want to make a point with showing these slides. So here you can see on the entry to Spoon, they're side by side. Russell is pretty much as side by side as you can be going into this corner. And then Lewis Hamilton comes across and takes up not the full racing line, but he definitely is trying to do that and does come over. And then at this point, Russell is having to go off the track. The reason I'm showing this is because, and I want to make this clear so people don't misunderstand me, I don't think Lewis Hamilton should get a penalty, or should have got a penalty rather, for forcing Russell off the track. I don't think that should have happened at all. And I do disagree with the way the racing, overtaking, defending, whatever you want to call it, regulations in Formula One. I do disagree with the way they are. I think they do need another look at them, because I do think they are, in terms of generally what racing rules are across all motorsport, I just think they're incorrect a lot of the time. But if you remember back to earlier this season with Yuki Tsunoda and Zhou Guanyu, Yuki Tsunoda was given a 5-second penalty for less than this. So why did the FIA not even note this as an incident? The reason, I believe, and I think if you were to ask, people who may be able to give that answer, I think they would probably admit to this being true. But the reason I don't think this was even noted is because it was a team, or it was within the same team. It was two cars from the same team. Therefore, for that type of stuff, they tend to just let it go and let the team sort it out if anything bad happens. But yeah, I just don't get why that Tsunoda penalty back in Spain was a penalty, but this wasn't even noted. Again, not saying it should have been. What Lewis did here, I think, was fine. He had the line, and Russell, I mean, if you look at this point, George Russell was never realistically going to overtake around the outside. And even go to the slide before, at the point where they start braking for Spoon, you need to be quite a bit further ahead if you're on the outside going into Spoon to actually overtake around the outside. So yeah, I don't think there was anything wrong with what happened here. I just don't understand the steward's decision making when it comes to the whole forcing another driver off the track. I just don't get it. Because this, again, is more egregious than I've seen from other drivers in the past, even this season, that have got penalties, or even that have been noted and investigated, even if no action has been taken. So yeah, I really don't understand that. As you can see later on, Russell eventually does have to go off the track, and Hamilton does. take up the racing line. But one thing I do want to get into when it comes to this little rise in tension between the drivers, which is definitely happening. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I'm not saying they hate each other, but I think definitely tensions are rising within the team. Russell, after this battle, said this on the radio, and you can see it right there. He asked, "Who do we want to fight here, each other or the others?" Now, at the time, I kind of saw what he was saying, but looking back at even why this battle occurred, I have no idea why he said this. The only reason he was battling Lewis Hamilton was because Lewis made a mistake at the second Degner. Before that, Lewis was quicker than Russell and was basically matching the pace of the Ferraris ahead and was looking better than Russell. And during the race, as we saw, Lewis Hamilton was quicker than George Russell. So why was he saying this? Because normally when a driver says this when they're fighting their teammate, they're saying this in the context of them being held up by their teammate because their teammate is going too slow compared to the pace they can do. I mean, we heard it from Lando Norris in the race yesterday when Oscar Piastri was right ahead of him, talking about, am I going to be let through here? I'm being held up. You're affecting our race, my race. And he was right to at least query that because he was a lot quicker, as we saw eventually by the end of the race, him finishing nearly a pit stop ahead of Piastri. Again, the only reason this particular battle happened is because Lewis made a mistake. He was still quicker than Russell during the race. So yeah, I just don't understand why he said this. In the context of what happened, it just doesn't make, to me, any sense whatsoever. And yeah, it was just looking back, when I thought back to, and I think it was probably when I saw the highlights of the race, I looked at the battle and then looked at that radio message and I was just like, that just doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't feel right to me. And I'm not, criticizing him massively for what he said, but it's just, I don't know. It's just very weird what he said, given the context of why that battle occurred. And yeah, it's just very weird to me. But given as well that Lewis Hamilton, earlier this season and even now, has been talking about how the team needs to follow his advice and his direction more when it comes to working on certain elements of the car to improve the car long term, you definitely can hear a tinge of how's best to describe this? What I'm trying to talk about. When he's talking about that in terms of the team making sure they listen to his advice, and he especially did talk about this at the start of the season, and he actually, I think, mentioned after the first race that the team didn't listen to him over the winter in terms of what they needed to work on to make the car better. Of course, they started the year with such a horrendous car. I think definitely there is a internal frustration with, I guess, Lewis being irked at the direction Mercedes have gone with the development of this car, not just from last year, but this year. And also, and I will admit, there isn't a lot of evidence to back this up. This is just my opinion. I'm not claiming this as fact. But I do get the feeling that he feels as though the team has been more so listening to Russell and what he's been saying about the balance of the car rather than Hamilton. And I think that's why Lewis has said a couple of times, that he really hopes the team listen to his advice and makes the improvements that he wants. And I think Lewis is absolutely fair to say those things, because at the end of the day, Lewis Hamilton is the greatest racing driver there's ever been. He is a proven winner for Mercedes especially. It's not like he's won all of his titles in his races elsewhere. George Russell, at the end of the day, he's only won one race and finished on the podium a few times. So I think definitely he, it's fair for him to say those things, because it has been proven from the past that they can win with Lewis Hamilton, and that when he has particular issues with the way the car is, and he, offers his feedback, that, when Mercedes listen to him, that it actually does result in good things. So, yeah. I guess in summary, tension's definitely rising at Mercedes between these two drivers, and I do wonder, maybe before the end of the year, maybe these two will come to blows on track. We saw it obviously very close to the final chicane. I thought they were going to hit each other. Thankfully, great driving between the two to avoid contact. Really great piece of racing from Russell, one to overtake Hamilton, and then Hamilton to get him back. And nearly made contact into turn one. Hamilton, very close with his rear tyre to Russell's, I think, front wing it was in the end. But yeah, I think this is the start of something between these two drivers. And I will admit, I have thought before, not too much, but I have thought before that this was inevitable. But I didn't think it was going to happen in the context of, not like them fighting for a championship at the minute. They did well to finish in the top 5 of the race yesterday. But if next year, by some, and it's given how good Red Bull are at the minute, it will be some miracle. If, starting next season, they have a car that is able to win the world championship, then I would not be surprised if these two clash on track and, they are no longer getting on whatsoever. Would not be surprised by that at all, because definitely something has been sparked between the two. There's no doubt about that. I think anyone who just understands how drivers work in a team, especially in Formula One, can see that something has been started. There's no doubt about that. But let me know in the chat, guys, with what I've talked about. Do you think there is an internal battle just starting? What side of the fence do you fall on? And with, the battle yesterday, how did you feel about those close battles on track? And yeah, how do you interpret this situation, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Let me know in the live chat and the comment section down below. Of course, I'll get into your chat comments soon. But let's now go on to our final topic of the stream, which is for Red Bull and, more importantly, Sergio Perez, who had an absolute disaster yesterday. Now, what we're going to get into is looking at his incident with Magnussen, which I know it's clear and obvious he was at fault for the crash. But the reason I want to look at it is because it was just so horrendous. It's one of the worst driver errors I think I've ever seen. It was just so... I said it earlier with Stroll and his performance this year, and Perez at the minute, you'd have to probably say is getting to that level of, just pathetic. Absolutely pathetic. And this attempt, silly, amateurish attempt at an overtake was just, when I saw the replay of it, even when I saw it live, I think in my mind even I was thinking, what are you doing? Let's just quickly look at it. So you can see here, Perez, going for the inside move. At this point, Kevin starts to turn in. And at this point, you could already see contact was going to happen because Perez hasn't even got his front wing alongside any of Magnussen's car, which just proves how silly this accident is. And then at this point, you can see locking up. He knows he's going to hit him. And then at this point, it's where the contact is made. And if we go on board, this is the point where Perez decides to duck out from the slipstream and go for the inside move. Now, if you have a massive extra speed into the braking zone compared to the other driver, we've seen it in the past. We've seen Perez do it in the past. He did it to Lewis Hamilton famously at this corner in 2012. If you have much more pace into the corner, it's absolutely possible. So it's not as though overtaking of this corner is impossible, and even thinking about overtaking is insane. But if we go on to this picture, you can see by the time, and this is at the point where Kevin starts to turn in again, just look at that. He's nowhere near him, but still decides to commit to the move. And maybe, obviously, these are still images. When, he's going for this move, it's, very quick. Everything's happening so fast, of course. But surely, even when he started the brake for the hairpin, and obviously later the Magnussen, surely there was an opportunity to try and stop himself from doing this. But it was almost though we saw it with his Albon crash that he absolutely caused in Singapore. It's like he thought, fuck it, I'm just going to send it and hopefully I make contact with him and just bash him out of the way. I'm not saying deliberately made or, deliberately crashed into him, but I think was just hoping that it would just be wheel-to-wheel contact rather than, front wheel to side pod or front wing to rear tire or anything like that. I think it was just hoping to bounce off Magnussen and magically appear ahead of him, which is basically what he tried to do, Alex Albon at the hairpin in Singapore. Such a careless, stupid, and unnecessary. And I think, was it Kevin Magnussen? Yeah, it was. Kevin Magnussen said it after the race, and also Jolyon Palmer, who does commentary for F1 TV, said it. Desperate. So desperate. And this mistake also screamed of a driver that just has zero confidence and knows that they're under massive pressure for this seat. And you can see at this point where he makes contact. I mean, look at his steering wheel. Full lock. Full lock. And he still can't avoid him. That's how deep he was going into the corner. He just braked way, way too late. And was coming from way too far behind in the end, Checo. So yeah, just such a stupid mistake, and that's why I decided here's a off-board view right before they made contact. Yeah, the reason I decided in this stream to cover it is because again, so I couldn't believe it at the time that he actually went for it. There was actually, I think it was the lap before, he got close to Magnussen in the hairpin, and he very nearly hit the back of Magnussen. Clearly didn't learn his lesson, and decided to just career into him. Also, if you go back and watch the race, that the lap before, where he got very close to hitting Magnussen in the hairpin, you would have seen that Kevin was taking a wide entry in to get the best exit. That's what he was doing. Why did Checo not register that in his mind? Because, if he knew, if he actually thought about that before he went for this silly move, then he would have known that Kevin is going to take a really drastic left turn into the corner from a, quite a bit of a wider angle than, say, others who decide to go for a wider line through that hairpin. And, and that could make the overtake tricky, if not just too risky, too difficult. I just don't get why he even did that again. I just don't get it. Just so stupid. And as well, it's not like Perez was racing a guy who's in a similarly paced car. He could have passed Magnussen at the next corner or down the pit straight, because Magnussen had just been overtaken by Ocon. Come on. Again, so stupid. And yeah, the poll is running in the chat right now, guys. Let me know. Do you think Sergio Perez deserves to stay at Red Bull for 2024? Again, my view at the minute is I'm not sure, because there has been a few performances this year which I think he's done the job expected of him. But there's also been races where he's done this. So it's kind of for me, it's a 50-50. But let me know in the chat your thoughts. Of course, if he keeps this up until the end of the season, then I'd probably sway towards saying he doesn't deserve to be at Red Bull for next year. But yeah, we'll have to see how he does. Hopefully improves on a disastrous weekend where he was 7, nearly 8 tenths of a second slower than his teammate in qualifying, which is pathetic as far as I'm concerned. So yeah, let's go back to these pictures. And actually, before I come on to your comments in the chat, let me just plug the next couple pieces of content for the channel. So, you may have seen yesterday that after tonight's stream, I said the next piece of content would be a live stream on Sunday. That is still happening, as you can see. Live Sunday, the 1st of October, this Sunday, live at 3 p.m. UK time. Make sure to come along to it. Topic yet to be confirmed, but I think I'm getting a general idea as to what it will be about. But I will be uploading a video, a Red Bull video. Not sure what the title is going to be yet, but it will be a Red Bull video that I will be uploading at 4 p.m. UK time on Thursday afternoon. So make sure to come along and give that video a watch on Thursday afternoon. That video I've been working on the last like 2 or 3 weeks after the Italian Grand Prix. The reason it's not going to be out tomorrow is because I just need to re-record a few lines for the video, and then it should be all ready to go. So yeah, hopefully that'll be all good for Thursday, and then yeah, be live on Sunday at 3 p.m. UK time. The topic I'm probably going to do for that Sunday stream is probably going to be Red Bull themed. Not entirely Red Bull themed, but probably going to be to do with Red Bull, looking at the ideas I've got down at the moment. And of course, a few days after that, we'll be doing a weekend preview of the Qatar Grand Prix. So if you are new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe for that content coming up and hit the notifications bell. For everyone watching right now, make sure to smash the like button. We're currently on 9 likes. Let's try and get up to 20 plus if we can, given that we've got 28 people watching. So yeah, make sure to smash that like button if you haven't already. And I will get to the results of the poll, of course, at the end of the stream, which are looking pretty interesting at the moment. But yeah, let's go through your comments for the next few minutes. Hello to all of you. Hopefully you're all good. Josiah says Hamilton is finishing P2. Even though Perez at the minute's been pretty poor, I don't think he will, because I just don't think the Mercedes car's quick enough. And I think all Perez needs to do is have like 2 or 3 like good race weekends, and I think he'll easily finish in second because the Red Bull car is so quick. I mean, you know, the next race in Qatar, obviously a sprint weekend as well. If Perez finishes, you know, second in the sprint and then like 3rd, 4th in the race, that's, you know, like 20 plus points. And not expecting Mercedes to be really that quick in Qatar. If you guys remember the track layout at the Lusail circuit from the 2021 race we had there, it's very similar to the first sector in Suzuka and a lot of Suzuka, to be honest. So I don't think the pecking order really is going to be that much different in Qatar. The only difference is it will probably suit the teams who, you know, aren't as quick in the long on throttle sections. Teams like Alpine, Alfa Romeo, Aston Martin to a small degree. It will suit them a bit more. But really, a lot of the pecking order should be the same. You know, Red Bull, McLaren, Ferrari, Mercedes, Aston Martin, AlphaTauri, Alpine, probably the top 7 teams. Josiah says if Verstappen is top 3 in the sprint, he's world champion. Yeah. Yeah, we'll have to see what happens in the sprint with Max. Blue flag Alpha says Alonso is going to lose 4th and 5th with his poor car performance. we did hear yesterday the beginning of Alonso losing it with his team, didn't we? Moaning about the strategy, which I don't think there's really Aston Martin could have done anything they could have done about it. Their car was wearing the tyres out just more than they were expecting. And they had to, I mean, yeah, they could have pitted later, but then they would have lost even more time staying out when clearly their tyres had gone. So at the end of the day, they were just very slow. Yeah, Alonso, I would not be surprised if he finished like 6th or even 7th in the Drivers' Championship at this rate, which is so annoying because he's had such a great season, Alonso. And he's been destroyed, really, by his own team. I can't think of one race weekend this year where Fernando's not been getting the best out of the car. Can you guys think of a race? I can't think of one race this year where I thought, yeah, Fernando could have probably been better today. I don't think there's one race. There was a sprint race in Austria where he finished behind Stroll, but that's a sprint race. And it, only cost him 1 point in the end. But yeah, he's had such a great year, Fernando, but he's just been screwed by his team, who just haven't developed the car at all. Since the mid part of the season, they've gone literally nowhere. And are now reversing down the field. The Merc battle was the highlight of the race. Is Greg Martinez? Yeah. It was definitely one of the highlights of the race. I wouldn't say the definite highlight, but it was definitely one of them. Josiah saying Russell is a punk. Sparky Pizza, Sergio gotta go. Greg Martinez says swap Perez with who? He is second in the championship after all. True, but he's still nowhere, not performing anywhere near to the level that he should be, given how good the car is. Inside 404, doesn't Perez have a clause that if he's P2 he can stay? I don't know if that's the case or not. But he is confirmed to be at Red Bull next year, so it's not a matter of will he be at Red Bull next year. He will, but does he deserve to be at Red Bull next year? Is what we know. I think what the debate needs to be at the minute. Greg Martinez says Hamilton had beef with Nico, now George, so it's a Lewis issue. I don't think that's the best way of looking at it, to be honest. Because I mean, if you don't account for the context of the Lewis Nico stuff and why that all turned sour, and why maybe the Lewis and Russell relationship is starting to turn sour. Again, if you look at the context, I think Lewis definitely with the Rosberg one was in the right. What was it, Monaco, that in 2014 that caused that relationship to go downhill. And even though we're never going to know with Rosberg's qualifying lap that weekend whether he did go off on purpose, from the video evidence we have, I think he did. I think he saw that he was slower in the first sector, saw that he was going wide in, I think was it Mirabeau, and then just decided to take the easy way out. And again, I believe that, not saying that it's a fact. That's just what I believe to have happened, and I think Lewis was right for being miffed at that, because it was dirty. It was really dirty. And obviously Rosberg, did unsportsmanlike moves later on in their relationship. Obviously Austria a couple years later, where he just understeered into him, and it was like the most obvious, I'm not even going to try and make the corner type of move. So I think with that, in terms of how it started, I think it was fair enough for Lewis to be really miffed. I think with the relationship with Russell, I can see Lewis's point of view, and I can agree with it to a certain extent, but we haven't seen a lot of stuff on track that could really show us maybe why, they're not maybe as best of friends now as they were 6 months ago. They haven't quite had an on-track moment yet that is, clearly illustrated why one driver doesn't like the other or whatever. So yeah, I think if you look at the context, I don't think it's an issue with Lewis. Good evening to McLaren F1 Race, by the way. Good to see you, mate. McLaren F1 Race says, makes me wonder why Marco is still the advisor for Red Bull lol, apart from Max Verstappen, who, yes, Marco nurtured to a Red Bull seat. All of the rest of the decisions lately are going to shit, driver-wise. Yeah, I mean, if we look at, since Max was promoted to Red Bull rather than just when he got into F1, Max was promoted to Red Bull in what, May of 2016. Since then, they put Pierre Gasly in the Red Bull, Albon in the Red Bull, Perez in the Red Bull, and then if you look at Toro Rosso / AlphaTauri, they've had what, Gasly, Hartley, Fiat. They had Sainz, but he was already there before. Obviously, Verstappen made the move to Red Bull. Tsunoda, and obviously Vries, Ricciardo, Lawson. There has been definitely, I think he's definitely made some more incorrect decisions since Verstappen went to Red Bull. There's no doubt about that. Why they gave Brendan Hartley a drive in 2018, I have no idea. I think it was literally because I think Helmut just disliked Daniel Kvyat that much at the time in terms of how Daniel was performing. And obviously, since Kvyat lost his Red Bull drive, I think the writing was on the wall. Really from then on until he got dropped for a season. But yeah, hiring Brendan Hartley was so good. I mean, Brendan is a very good racing driver, don't get me wrong. He's had great success in motorsport, but he was not Formula One quality. That's the reason he never made it to Formula One before when he was in the academy. With Daniel Ricciardo and Carlos Sainz as well at the time. So yeah, that decision was baffling. They promoted Pierre Gasly too early, but to be fair, in terms of trying to keep the hires for the Red Bull team in-house, only being drivers from the academy, that's the only choice they had. But I think in hindsight, and even at the time, I think they should have probably considered looking outside of the academy for a replacement for Daniel Ricciardo. Maybe hiring Sergio Perez at the time in 2018 or for 2019 would have been a better option than signing Pierre Gasly, because Gasly was not ready for Red Bull. He wasn't even close at that particular time to his prime, Pierre Gasly. He got a lot better the couple of years after he left Red Bull. So yeah, I think that was definitely a wrong decision. Alex Albon being put in the Red Bull, I think even at the time I questioned it, because I mean Albon couldn't even at the time beat Daniel Kvyat a lot of the time, who was outperforming him. Kvyat had just been on the Red Bull, or just been on the podium for Toro Rosso. I think before that decision was made. I know obviously Daniel had already had his chance, literally, but I don't think Albon had proved anything at that point to suggest that he was ready to be in that situation. And I think ultimately for his development at that time, that was a terrible decision, because Albon really needed like at least two full years at AlphaTauri / Toro Rosso to really, develop confidence and really show its best. I mean, look at him at Williams. His first year at Williams was good, but it wasn't. There were some performances in there which weren't that great. But look at this year, even more confidence, more consistent, and he's been one of the, top 10, 11 maybe drivers on the grid 2023. So again, like the Gasly situation, just thrown in too early, and no surprise he failed. And then signing Perez to replace Albon was the right decision. Perez was one of the top probably 5-6 drivers in Formula One in 2020, and it was absolutely the right decision to hire Sergio Perez. And let's remember with Perez, last season, Perez had maybe his best year in Formula One. He was brilliant. He won 2 amazing races in Monaco and was it Baku? No, Monaco and Singapore. He had a great season. He was very close to finishing second in the championship, despite the Red Bull in 2022 not being massively quicker than the Ferrari during the year. It was only really in the last few races where they had a big, pace advantage. But yeah, just this year, his performance has dropped off and he's performed poorly. So yeah. And then you look at, AlphaTauri as of late. I think ultimately, yeah, right decision keeping Tsunoda there. But I can forgive him for hiring Nick De Vries because we all got carried away with De Vries' performance in the Williams. So I can forgive that mistake. But yeah, what they're doing in terms of the lineup for AlphaTauri for 2024 is not right. And I love Daniel Ricciardo, and I thought he had a good couple races on his return earlier this season, and I am interested to see what he does on return, because I think people are being a little too harsh to him. But going forward, next year, AlphaTauri's lineup should be Yuki Tsunoda and Liam Lawson. Quite simple. But yeah, they've gone with Tsunoda and Ricciardo, and kept Perez, which may or may not be the wrong decision. So yeah, he's definitely getting it wrong a lot more than he's getting it right, I think, in the last few years. And I mean, how old is his Helmut? Let me have a quick look to see how old Helmut Marko is. Got to be in his 70s easily. And he raced in Formula One when it was what, 1971 or 2, 18. Oh my god, he is 80 years old. 80 years old. He was born during World War II. April 1943. That's crazy. I saw someone say he was 80 years old on Twitter, but I thought they were just being hyperbolic. I didn't know he was literally 80 years old. That's incredible. Yeah, I think given obviously the comments he made the other week about Perez, which were clearly racist, and again, him getting decisions more so wrong than right, wouldn't be the worst idea for Red Bull to kind of phase him out, given his age and, his decisions lately, and plus the racism thing. I mean, I said at the time, I think they should have suspended him for that. At the very least, suspended him. But yeah, I think Helmut Marko will probably leave Formula One in the next 2 or 3 years. I don't see him going, until 90 years old. I don't see that at all. To be fair, I think if Red Bull do dominate Formula One until the end of 2025, I think 2025 being his final season would probably be the best way for him to go out, given how important he's been to the Red Bull project. Find some other comments here. Greg Martinez, reminder of the races. All of the races beneficial for Red Bull. Well, maybe not Brazil. Yeah. Yeah, maybe not Brazil, but it probably will be beneficial for them. I don't think I know Singapore ended up being a bad track, but that was more so just of getting it wrong on the setup. I mean, I don't think they're sorry, I don't think they've necessarily got a bad track for street circuits because I mean they still won in Baku, Monaco, Melbourne, you know. So I don't think there's a necessarily. I don't think there is a weak track for the Red Bull. Weaker, yeah, but I don't think there is a weak track. Barky Pete says, if Lewis isn't named a number one driver, he will never win his eighth with George taking points here and there. Even though Lewis is up to 12, is up 12-3 in races, Max will never have a number one other than him. I have seen people saying that online that, you know, Mercedes need to treat Lewis Hamilton like a number one driver and have him as the clear number one. I don't think they can do that at this point. If they were going to do that, they would have had to have done that when Russell started at Mercedes. It's too far gone now because if you look at last season, Russell beat Hamilton in the championship. And even though, yeah, I thought Lewis was better than Russell in 2022, and I don't think Russell's 2022, in comparison to Hamilton's, was as great as people make out. I think the greatest thing about Russell's 2022 was his consistency more than anything. But given that happened, plus if you look at their qualifying head-to-head, I think Russell is ahead. I just don't see how you could possibly, you know, do that and say Lewis Hamilton is the number one driver. There's no way. There's just no way to have that type of arrangement at Mercedes. I just impossible, I think, at this point. And I don't think necessarily that should have happened anyway. George Russell is a top Formula One driver. He is incredibly quick, and he is, whether you like it or not, he is the team's future. He's been with the Mercedes, you know, driver academy for nearly 10 years. Toto Wolff has, you know, been supporting this guy for so long. And I think even Toto has said he is the, you know, the future of Mercedes. So I don't see how you could possibly orchestrate that. I think having Lewis as a clear number one driver for a team would it deserved, no doubt about it, but you would then need to go out and go get a driver who is going to be subservient. And Valtteri Bottas was subservient to Hamilton. And given how Russell was performing at Williams, and given he was part of the Mercedes Academy, I don't see how, you know, there's no way they could have kept him still on the sidelines and kept Valtteri Bottas. Bottas, remember, in 2021 was pretty poor. He, you know, a lot of the time was way out of position for where he should have been and had multiple bad races in that season. So, yeah, but yeah, it's too late now. It is too late now. They are absolutely equal within the team at this. McLaren F1 Race says, plus I take it Marco is maybe, or maybe he is responsible for Vettel's victorious legacy, and I expect he has dead load of shares in Red Bull, probably why he's still relevant there. Yeah, definitely he deserves credit for, you know, the rise of Sebastian Vettel and Daniel Ricciardo as well. Let's not forget Daniel Ricciardo was a brilliant driver for Red Bull that I don't think he gets the credit he deserves for his time at Red Bull, because for Ricciardo's first 3 seasons he was Red Bull's best driver and had, you know, Vettel, Fiat and Verstappen as teammate. So yeah. Looney Classics. says George needs to relax. He is not the level of Lewis. He might be good enough to beat Max or Lando, but Lewis is on another level. Looney Classics, McLaren from race saying no wonder Marco's a massive racist, allegedly, lol. Looney Classics saying, is Marco racist or is he just from a different time? Him and Bernie do say some racist things, but they were born in a time where white supremacy was the norm, and it's hard to let go of that. I mean, I think both can be true. I think Helmut, Marco, and Bernie Ecclestone can both be racist and both have that excuse. And I think that goes for really anyone from that generation of, like, you know, born definitely before like the 1950s. We can still label them a racist if it's clear they're racist, but still say, well, this is the reason why they're racist. Because back when they were, you know, when they grew up, that's just the way things were. But that doesn't mean they're, you know, that doesn't mean they're not that. But I mean, you are right. You know, during when Helmut Marko grew up, yeah, it was accepted, I guess. But yeah, times thankfully have changed and we have progressed as a, you know, as a species or as a society, whatever you want to call it. Looney Classic says, out of George, Charles, Lando, and Piastri, someone will retire without a world championship. Maybe even 3 out of these drivers will not get one. Maybe all of them. That's actually, I know you haven't put that as a question, but that actually would be a very good question. Yeah. For everyone watching, out of those 4, Russell, Leclerc, Norris, and Piastri, if one of those drivers ends up without a title, who do you think that driver would be? My guess is either it'd be one of the McLaren drivers and Leclerc. The reason I say and Leclerc is because he's with Ferrari and he probably will be for still quite a few years. And yeah, I don't think Charles's career prospects are looking that great, if I'm being honest. And of course, you know, Leclerc's not been in a proper title fight, so we have no idea whether in an actual title fight he'd be able to get the job done. I think he probably would, but we don't have the evidence to know that. Kind of like with Verstappen before 2021, we knew he was an amazing driver and he was one of the best in the world, but we didn't know whether in a title fight whether he would still be able to deliver under all that pressure. And well, even though he won it in illegitimate circumstances, he didn't crack under pressure at all. Couple questionable incidents towards the end of the season, but I wouldn't say that was cracking under pressure. I think it was just him being typically over aggressive like he's been his entire career. Josh says Leclerc might not win due to Ferrari. Yeah, I think Leclerc definitely has to be. If there's going to be one out of those 4, it'd have to be Leclerc. And we are expecting him to sign up for a new, I don't know, whatever year deal at Ferrari. It's probably going to be for at least 3 years. So, yeah. McLaren from Race says, or asks, hope you recovered from yesterday, Chazza. Do you have any Formula 1 jet lag today? A bit. I will admit, even though I had a good amount of sleep, I felt tired all day. I feel like I've not had enough sleep, even if I have. And I've slept, quite a while. I had, 10 hours sleep? And I still don't feel like I've had enough. And I did. If you include this stream, from Thursday night to tonight, I've done 7 live streams, I believe, in, 5 days? So yeah, crazy. But I've done it. So there you go. But yeah, those are all the comments in chat. Thank you guys for commenting as always. Let me finish up this poll in the chat. We're asked you guys, does Sergio Perez deserve to stay at Red Bull for 2024? 34 votes. And you guys, with 58% of the vote, went for no. Second was yes with 26% and not sure 14%. So quite clearly you guys don't think he deserves to be at Red Bull in 2024, which I can't really blame you guys for thinking that, to be honest. But again, quick reminder of the next two pieces of content. Red Bull video, a recorded video, will be coming out on Thursday afternoon at 4 p.m. UK time. Make sure to check it out. And then my next live stream will be this Sunday, live at 3 p.m. UK time for what is probably going to be a Red Bull themed stream. Make sure to join for that. And of course, a few days after that, on the Thursday, the, what would it be, 4th of October, I think, we'll be kicking off the Qatar Grand Prix weekend with the weekend preview. So make sure to come along to all of that. And yeah, before you go, if you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe for more content like this. Before you go as well, make sure to smash the like button. Would be great if you could do so. And if you want to keep up to date with my content, make sure to follow me on Twitter at ChazHD5 or ChazRHD. You can find me on Twitter. And there is a link below to the Discord server if you do want to join our server of about 500 members. It is a great place, that server, for notifications for my videos and streams, and also just channel updates in general if you want to know what's going on with things. So yeah, if you want to join the server, link below in the description, guys. But until that recorded video on Thursday, my next stream on Sunday, and until the next Grand Prix in Qatar in a couple weeks' time, guys, it has been me, ChazRHD. Goodbye.